Before The Legend of Zelda became a formula, it was much more experimental. We had feelings of mystery, danger, of standing alone in a world that did not explain itself. We didn't have a map, there was no tutorial, no glowing marker telling you where to go, just a sword, a cave, and the question that every player had to answer for themselves. What is out there? The first 4 Legend of Zelda games, so The Legend of Zelda, Zelda II, The Adventure of Link, A Link to the Past, and Link's Awakening, they all created this feeling of wonder. It was a sense that this little pixelated world was alive, mysterious, unpredictable, and full of things that you weren't supposed to understand. They're all pretty strange games, sometimes even awkward, but they all carried a kind of sincerity that is rare today. You could feel the imagination of the people behind them, developers experimenting, dreaming, trying to translate the wonder of childhood exploration into pixels and sound. It was the early days of The Legend of Zelda. There wasn't a formula just yet, they were inventing it as they go. And that is one of the reasons why the early Legend of Zelda games are so special. Every one of them feels like a different answer to the same question. What makes an adventure feel like an adventure? The original Legend of Zelda threw you into a world that felt ancient and dangerous, a place that didn't care if you survived but rewarded your curiosity if you tried. Zelda II completely changed everything. It was a side-scrolling RPG hybrid that didn't really make any sense by modern standards, but you can tell they were chasing a new kind of magic. A Link to the Past took all that wild experimentation and distilled it into something grand, something epic, the kind of story you could get lost in for hours. And then we had Link's Awakening. This was the one that looked inward. It turned the entire idea of adventure into something surreal and emotional, asking what happens when the world you're fighting to save might not even be real. Each one of these games feels like it was made with no specific roadmap, just creativity and instinct. You can sense the courage of the Nintendo developers, the willingness to fail, to try something completely different, to build worlds out of pure imagination. It's the kind of risk that you rarely see anymore because now Zelda, well, has to be The Legend of Zelda. Back then, it could be anything. And that is one of the reasons why those early Zelda games hit different. They made an era where mystery wasn't part of the experience, it was the whole experience. You didn't just play the games to finish a story or collect every heart piece, you played them to get lost, to wonder what might be hidden under a random bush or behind a waterfall. To feel small in a world that didn't exist to serve you, but to be discovered by you. So when talking about the first 4 Zelda games, a lot of people say it's just nostalgia. Well, it isn't just nostalgia, it's a longing for that sense of discovery, when adventure wasn't just a checklist when you opened up your notebook, it was a feeling, a quiet, powerful feeling that the world was bigger than you, and maybe the next screen could change everything. Well, if you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button down below for even more Zelda content here on Triforce Times, and also stick around to the end of the video because I asked you, the Triforce Times community, for your memories of the first 4 Zelda games. I've got loads of people writing in and I'm really excited to bring you your memories of the first 4 Zelda games. First of all, we have The Unknown World, and this is The Legend of Zelda from 1986. So when you start the original Legend of Zelda, there's no fanfare, no sweeping cinematic, no guiding voice, just a patch of grass, a cave, and a lone character in the centre of the screen. That silence says everything, so it's an invitation to your new adventure. The game doesn't tell you what to do because it wants you to decide. This is one of the first examples of an open world in video game history, so there's a quiet confidence in this design from Nintendo. So that level of trust in the player was really innovative back then, and almost impossible now. From the very first moments of The Legend of Zelda, it gave you freedom, and with that freedom, a sense of wonder that few games have ever matched. You walk into that first cave because something in you says you should. Inside, an old man stands by a flame and says the words every Zelda fan knows by heart. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this. That's all. One line, one sword, and suddenly you're on your own. It's pretty hard to describe how powerful that moment was back in 1986 on the Nintendo Entertainment System. This was a brand new world, a living, breathing mystery waiting to be uncovered. Every screen you moved into could hold danger, or treasure, or nothing at all. There was no clear path, no obvious sequence of events. You weren't being led by the hand, you were just wandering. And that wandering was the point. You learned this version of Hyrule not by being told, but by failing over and over again. You would die to a mob of Octoroks, you'd lose your rupees, you'd start over, and you would try and try again. Every time you would remember something new, which path led to the mountains, where that hidden cave was, what bush you had to burn, how far you could push your luck before dying again. Slowly, piece by piece, the world of Hyrule started to take shape, not only on the screen, but in your mind. And in many fans out there, I know you created maps. A lot of people have written in and said they used to create maps with their brother or their sister, or their parents or their uncle. Really, really good memories from the original Legend of Zelda. That process of learning through discovery is what makes the first Zelda so special. You build up the story through curiosity, and every secret you find feels like something only you could have uncovered, and in a way, that is what makes the game timeless. It doesn't matter how many people have played it, your journey through that world always feels personal. There's a deep sense of mystery in the world design. Hyrule doesn't feel like it exists for you, it's just there. The enemies move whether you're ready or not. The dungeons sit quietly, waiting for someone brave enough to enter. It's a world that doesn't bend to the player's will, and that is one of the reasons why it feels real. When Shigeru Miyamoto designed The Legend of Zelda, he was thinking about his own childhood, exploring forests and caves near his home, never knowing what he would find. That's the feeling the game captures perfectly. The thrill of being small in a vast unexplored space. It's all about the curiosity that makes someone want to become a hero. And this is one of the things that is missing from modern games. We traded curiosity for clarity. Adventure has become structure. Maps, checklists, objectives, waypoints. In the original Zelda, adventure was freedom. And yes, of course, there are exceptions to the rule. We've got Elden Ring, one of the best games in the modern era. Breath of the Wild, of course, goes back to the roots of the original Zelda game. But talking about that original Zelda, the adventure was the freedom. You didn't need to know what you were supposed to do, you just needed to wonder. And that is one of the reasons why nearly 40 years later, this game still feels alive. It's the feeling of mystery, of danger, stepping into a world that doesn't explain itself. The Legend of Zelda reminds us what exploration really means. We're not necessarily uncovering every secret, but we're willing to go looking in the first place. The first Zelda game is not necessarily about saving Hyrule. It's about discovering it. One screen, one mistake, and one quiet victory at a time. Next up, we got the bold experiment. This is Zelda II: The Adventure of Link in 1987. So if The Legend of Zelda was about mystery and discovery, then Zelda II: The Adventure of Link was all about risk. One of the most misunderstood games in the entire Zelda series, the black sheep that wanted to do something completely different, right when everyone thought that they knew what Zelda was supposed to be. So the first game was top-down exploration, and Zelda 2 flipped everything sideways, literally. And suddenly you were fighting in side-scrolling combat, leveling up stats, learning magic, visiting towns full of NPCs with dialogue. And it felt like Zelda had become part RPG, part action game, part fever dream, but it certainly broke every expectation set by the first game. But that's all part of what makes Zelda 2 so fascinating. It's a game born out of uncertainty and curiosity, the same spirit that defined early Nintendo. They could have played it safe, made another dungeon crawler just like the original. Instead, they tore it all down, they started over, as to ask, what else could Zelda be? Well, the answer they found was pretty messy. Zelda 2 is punishingly hard. Its combat demands precision, death can feel cruel. But beneath that difficulty, there is something bold, a desire to push boundaries. It's the only Zelda that feels almost antagonistic towards the player, daring you to master it and earn its respect. When you finally do, the satisfaction definitely hits different. It's also the first time the series really tried to build a world that felt lived in. You could visit towns, you could talk to the villagers, you can get magic upgrades. It gave Zelda a sense of society. a civilization beyond your hero's quest. For all its flaws, Zelda II laid the groundwork for the narrative ambition that would later define the series. Games like Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild owe part of their DNA to the risks that Zelda II took. But if you ask a modern day Zelda fan, Zelda II is the odd one out in the series. But there's something really interesting about that kind of experiment. Zelda II didn't fail because it was bad. It struggled because it tried something different. It reached further than the technology, the genre, maybe even the audience could handle. And that's what makes it so important. It shows us that creativity isn't always clean or comfortable. Sometimes it's really awkward, sometimes it doesn't work, but it always matters, and it went on to shape the series in really, really important ways. Even now, playing it feels like stepping into an alternate version of Zelda's history, a glimpse of what the series might have become if Nintendo had followed a different path. Weird, it's difficult, it's divisive, but I think it's absolutely essential. So Zelda 2 is a reminder that the heart of Zelda has never been about following a formula. It's about trying something new, even if it might fail. It's about curiosity and the same spark that started it all. Well, next up we've got the Grand Vision, and this is A Link to the Past, and this one is from 1991. After 2 games defined by experimentation and extremes, A Link to the Past feels like a moment of clarity. It's as if the Zelda series suddenly remembered itself. This one is a statement game. This is where Zelda truly becomes Zelda, where all the scattered ideas from the first 2 games finally come together in something cohesive, confident, and utterly timeless. In the very first moments, rain pouring down, thunder echoing through Hyrule Castle, you can feel the shift in tone. So yes, we've got a mysterious sandbox, and yes, it can be challenging, but this is a world with meaning. Every screen feels crafted, every piece of music is deliberate. You're no longer wandering through Hyrule, you are on a journey, and that journey has a purpose. A Link to the Past took the raw curiosity of the original and shaped it into a story. One that balanced freedom with direction, mystery with structure. Introduced so many of the ideas that would define the series for decades. The Master Sword, multi-layered dungeons, the hookshot, and a story that stretched beyond boundaries of good and evil. It was the first Zelda that felt truly epic. Of course, the game's genius lies within its dual worlds, the light world and the dark world, and they mirror each other in design, but not in spirit. One is hopeful and familiar, the other is twisted and corrupt. That mechanic was clever, it was symbolic, it taught the players that even in a world of adventure and heroism, there's always a reflection, a shadow side to everything. It was the first time a Zelda game felt philosophical. Every part of A Link to the Past feels like it's in conversation with that came before. The freedom of the first game, the ambition of the second, both of these concepts though refined and balanced and woven together. It's as if Nintendo finally found the rhythm that Zelda had been searching for all along, a perfect harmony between mystery and clarity, danger and beauty, nostalgia and innovation. One of the reasons why A Link to the Past endures is because of the feeling that the world really matters. Every dungeon conquered, every item found, every melody heard carries emotional weight. The game gives you just enough story to care: a kidnapped princess, a cursed land, a legendary blade hidden in a forest, but leaves enough mystery to make you fill in the gaps yourself. It invites your imagination to do the rest. For many players, and myself included, this was the first Zelda that felt like home. It wasn't safe or easy, and it struck the perfect balance between exploration and storytelling. You always knew where to go next, but it still felt like you were discovering on your own. That delicate balance is something that even modern games today still struggle to achieve. So A Link to the Past did a great job of refining Zelda and also defining the Legend of Zelda itself. It created the blueprint that every future game would follow or react against, and what's most impressive, it did this without losing the spark of mystery from the original or the courage of Zelda 2. It's the moment where the Legend of Zelda grew up. It didn't necessarily become bigger or louder, but there was understanding of what made adventure feel magical in the first place. Decades later, When that title screen appears and the music swells, yes, it is the start of a game, but also it feels like returning to a memory of when video games weren't just entertainment, but they tapped into your pure imagination. Well, next up today we've got The Dream Within, and this is Link's Awakening from 1993. So Link's Awakening was originally released in 1993 for the Game Boy, and really it shouldn't have worked. It's a handheld Legend of Zelda, smaller, simpler, limited by a tiny monochrome screen, but somehow those limitations gave it something no Zelda had before, and it was intimacy. Link's Awakening is quiet, strange, and personal. It's a story about isolation, identity, and the blurry line between dreams and reality. So the game begins with a storm. Link is shipwrecked, stranded on a mysterious island called Koholint. There's no Hyrule, no Princess Zelda, no Ganon, just a boy, an island, and a haunting dream. It's the first Zelda to ask what happens when the hero wakes up, and maybe that world is not even real. That question gives the whole game a dreamlike sadness. Every character you meet, from Marin, who longs to see the world beyond the island, to the monsters who warn you not to wake up the windfish. There's this awareness, in some quiet way, that something is not right. There's a loneliness under the surface of Koholint, a sense that everything beautiful here is also fragile and temporary. But that is one of the reasons why Link's Awakening is so powerful. The more you play, the more the game starts to feel like introspection. This is about saying goodbye to a world. The dungeons, the music, the little absurd characters. They all carry a sense of melancholy that no other Zelda quite captures. It's not really a grand adventure, it's a dream that you don't want to end. For a Game Boy title, Link's Awakening was impossibly ambitious. It carried over the structure from A Link to the Past, the tools, the exploration, the puzzles, but it gave everything a new emotional weight. Yes, you're collecting items, you're beating bosses, but also every small victory felt bittersweet. You knew what waking the windfish would mean. You weren't necessarily saving the world, you were on a journey to ending it. And that ending, that quiet, ambiguous awakening, still lingers decades later. Link opens his eyes to a vast ocean. The island is gone. The dream is over. Maybe it was all in his head. Maybe it was something more, but either way it leaves you with a feeling that's pretty hard to describe. Is it sadness? Is it nostalgia? It's the kind of ending that stays with you long after the credits roll. What's beautiful though about Link's Awakening is that it doesn't try to be epic. It's not about destiny or power or an ancient evil. It's about something smaller. The fleeting nature of experience and the beauty of things that can't last. It's the first Zelda game that feels like it understands loss. Link's Awakening closes the chapter on early Zelda perfectly. First game was about exploration, the second about experimentation, the third game's about definition, and this one, this dream, is about reflection. Together they form a complete emotional arc. Curiosity, courage, understanding, and acceptance. So it is fitting that Link's Awakening happens inside a dream, because those early Zelda games almost feel like a dream to us now. Fragments of an era where games were smaller, stranger, and somehow more personal. Well, next up we've got the Age of Wonder versus the Age of Mastery, comparing early Zelda to modern classics. So when you play Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, it is clear that Zelda has never stopped evolving. These modern masterpieces are big, beautiful, and endlessly detailed. They feel like the culmination of everything the series has ever tried to be. Freedom, exploration, mystery, emotion, all woven into one seamless world. And yet despite all of that scale and ambition, there's something about the first four Zelda games that hits in a completely different way. The difference isn't just about graphics or technology, it's about intent. The early Zelda games were about discovery born from limitation. They had to create mystery with just pixels, sound effects, and silence. Modern Zelda, on the other hand, is about discovery born from abundance. A world so vast you can lose yourself for hundreds of hours and still find something new. Both forms of Zelda are beautiful, but they speak to different types of imagination. In the Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo and Game Boy days, mystery came from what you couldn't see. The blank spaces on the map, the rumours you couldn't quite confirm, and the secrets whispered by playground kids who might have been lying. There was no internet back then to do easy and quick research. In Breath of the Wild, the mystery is still there, but it's visual, it's physical, and it's designed. You can climb every mountain, glide over valleys, the world is open, but it's also deliberate. You're exploring something that's crafted to be explored. The first 4 Zelda games ask you to imagine the world between the pixels. Breath of the Wild shows you the whole world in breathtaking detail, but in doing so, it gives you less room to invent it in your mind. The mystery shifts from what's out there to how do I get there, and it's a subtle change, but it is a meaningful one. So don't get me wrong, that doesn't make modern Zelda worse. Breath of the Wild deliberately broke the formula that A Link to the Past established way back in 1991. It brought back that feeling of being lost, of wandering without direction, of letting curiosity lead you. It's a love letter to the original Legend of Zelda, just expressed through a modern lens and with modern technology. But there's still something the early games had that even the most ambitious modern Zelda struggle to recapture, and that is the sense of the unknown. In 1986, there was no internet, no guides, no collective understanding of how a Zelda world should work. Every discovery felt like a secret between you and the game, a small moment of shared understanding with something that couldn't speak back. Today, Zelda is mythology. It's history. Every release carries expectation, huge expectation, legacy, structure. The games are still magical, but they no longer feel fragile. The early 4 games did. They felt like something that could fall apart at any second, and that rawness gives them soul. Modern Zelda games are about mastery, mastering your tools, your environment, the physics of a vast and interconnected world. The early Zelda games are about mystery, walking into the dark and hoping to find light. One is about control, the other is about wonder. Both forms of The Legend of Zelda are beautiful, both are necessary, but they reflect 2 different eras of imagination. One where adventure meant invention, and the other where adventure means immersion. So they all remind us that before adventure became something you could map, you could climb, you could catalogue, it was something simpler and something a little bit deeper. It was a feeling, a spark, a moment of silence before the music begins, when you take your first step into the unknown and think to yourself, I wonder what's out there. Well, finally today, let's have a look at why these games hit different. So when you look back at the first 4 Zelda games, it is easy to see them as relics compared to modern day games. Primitive, simple, old school. But that is kind of missing the truth. These games belong to a moment in time when games were still becoming something. Before Zelda was a formula, before Nintendo knew what Zelda meant, there was just an idea. There was a spark and a sense of wonder that couldn't necessarily be explained. Each of the early games carries that spark in its own way. The first Legend of Zelda was pure mystery, a blank world filled with possibility, a place that didn't care whether you were ready for it or not. It wasn't about guiding you, it was about trusting you to figure things out. Zelda II, The Adventure of Link, took that same spirit of curiosity and turned it into courage. The courage to experiment, to take risks, and to fail dramatically in public. Wasn't afraid to be weird, to challenge what Zelda even meant. And then A Link to the Past redefined it all. It found that perfect rhythm between exploration and storytelling, between freedom and purpose, and finally, Link's Awakening closed that era with a whisper, a dreamlike meditation on what it means to wake up, let go, and to say goodbye. What ties them together isn't mechanics or lore or even nostalgia. They all felt human. They all felt handmade and handcrafted. You can feel the fingerprints of the people who made them. The trial and the error, the imagination, the sense of play. There's an honesty in those early games that is rare today. They weren't trying to impress anyone, they weren't chasing trends or analytics or cinematic storytelling. They were chasing a feeling for the player. That feeling of discovery, of stepping into something bigger than you, not knowing where it might lead. Modern games, even the incredible ones, often feel designed to be understood. They explain themselves. They make sure you never get lost for too long. But in those first Zelda games, getting lost was the point. Confusion was part of the game design. Every screen could be a secret, every dead end could hide a new beginning. There was no pressure to play the right way because there wasn't one. When you play these games now, even decades later, you can still feel that freedom. There's a childlike wonder that comes from exploring without a map. These games weren't huge, but they felt infinite at the time, because your imagination filled in the blanks. The chime of a secret door, the flicker of the old man's fire, the lonely hum of 8-bit music. These moments stay with you because they were yours alone. That's one of the reasons why they hit so different. They remind us of a time when games didn't need to be perfect or profound, when every new idea felt dangerous, when discovery didn't come from tutorials or markers but from your curiosity, from the desire to see what might be hidden just out of sight, just on that other screen. The first 4 Zelda games captured something pure, the joy of exploring without knowing, the thrill of failing and trying again, the quiet beauty of a world that didn't exist for you but invited you in anyway. And that is one of the true legacies of early Zelda. Not the dungeons, or the items, or even the Triforce. It's that feeling of wonder. That small, electric moment when you step into a strange new world and whisper to yourself, what is this place? That is what adventure has always been. Not conquering the unknown, but it's all about embracing it. And that's why these games, these imperfect, beautiful, daring experiments, still hit different today. Okay, next up today, I want to go into some stories from the community. So I put out a call to the Triforce Times community and said, send in your memories of the first 4 Zelda games, and got loads of comments. So thank you to everybody who wrote in, and let's get stuck into them now. So first of all, we've got Mike Castleberry, and Mike says, I played Zelda II, Thanksgiving of '88, my cousin's house, and it was my first Zelda game. Then my best friend got it for Christmas, we played it like crazy, and I played Zelda 1 not long after. Got a Link to the Past, and I was in 6th grade recovering from surgery. It really helped me get through a difficult time. Well, thank you, Mike. Really appreciate your story there, and Link to the Past definitely has that healing power, and I'm glad you got through those tough moments. Next up we got Aaron, and Aaron says, I played the first 3 at a young age, though Link's Awakening was a bit delayed because I didn't get a Game Boy until Pokemon dropped. What I remember about the first game is the joy of exploring the world with my family. At that time, my sister and my dad played video games, and so did our relatives. Learning about Hyrule was a fascinating experience because it was all communal knowledge. My dad and older sister beat the game before I did, and I recall struggling with Ganon, and at the time, it seemed like it took years before I was finally able to go back and beat him. But in hindsight, maybe it was just a couple of months or some weeks. Zelda 2 is a particular favourite. What stands out to me about that one is I beat it on my dad's file when he was working. Kind of a dick move, but it was the first one that I beat. Those two are very special to me because my dad gave up gaming after the Nintendo Entertainment System, and while those two gave us something in common, it felt like drifting away that he never had any interest in future games, despite instilling such a huge love for this series in me. For the third game, I hated Moldorm as a kid. Don't know how long it took me to finally beat him, but it was that wall that kept me from progressing for quite some time. But what was so cool about that game is I had no player guides or any of those games by that time. I had the internet to look them up, but my younger self had left very few stones unturned. Well, thank you, Aaron. Wonderful story there. Next up, we got Lance, and Lance says, Zelda 1 is how I learned to read. According to my family, the story goes that one of them was playing the game on the Wii Virtual Console, and little me wanted to play. So they made a deal with me that I could play. I had to read all the text on the screen, essentially teaching myself to read so I could play. Well, Lance, that is a very, very cool story. And it's not just fun and curiosity and discovery in Zelda, it can actually teach you how to read as well. So that is a fantastic story. Next up, we've got Romulus879, and Romulus says, Link's Awakening was my first Zelda experience when I played it on the Game Boy with my brother. It wasn't the game that I had my first full playthrough with. I remember a few things from that time. I was 4 or 5 years old and didn't understand anything of the story. I liked the description of the windfish, which sounded quite funny. I remember the frog song. That was so weird in my ears. I told my friends in kindergarten this was the craziest sound I'd ever heard. Now, Link to the Past was my 4th Zelda game that I played after the Oracles and Link's Awakening. I was a bit older then, maybe 11 or 12. I remember the feeling. It was totally different from the other 3 games. I was really impressed about how huge the game was, with so many dungeons. It was challenging for me because I think there was so many tough boss fights if you're not an experienced player. And now, I still think it's one of the most challenging games in the series. Well, thank you, Romulus. Always appreciate your comment, and thank you for writing in. Next up, we got Maverick Marty, and Marty says, so funny enough, I grew up with the Nintendo Entertainment System games, so Box Brand New 2. We had all the booklets and the maps that they came with, and you'd think that I had beaten the original before 2, but it was actually the other way round. Learning how to fight Iron Knuckles in the first palace was key to the whole experience for me. I played the Game Boy game way later when I borrowed it from a friend, but not for long enough to beat it. I wouldn't manage that or even to play A Link to the Past until the mid-2000s, and those two solidified themselves as my favourites of the 2D games. Next up, we got Le Village Global, and they say, A Link to the Past was my first Zelda game, and the first game that I truly fell in love with. I was 4 when I played it in 1993. It shaped the person I am today, a Zelda fan and a collector, and a Nintendo gamer and collector also. I love the art, the iconography, and the lore of the games, and it's a perfect game to me. It also helped me learn English a lot back then. You see, I live in Quebec, where French is predominant. So having the game in English, I would constantly ask my mum to translate the dialogue for me. There is a French-Canadian variant of the game, but my mum could never get her hands on a copy. Well, it turns out today that variant is the crown jewel in my game collection, a sealed and WATA graded 9.8 out of 10 copy. 9.8 grade is incredibly rare for the Super Nintendo game, and it's pretty much flawless. Plus the variant itself is already rare on its own. It's a piece of history encapsulated, and it makes a beautiful addition to my collection and a cool story to tell. Thank you, Le Village Global. That is a very cool story, and I'm very jealous that you've got that 9.8 graded A Link to the Past. That is awesome. I've got a Japanese A Link to the Past in my collection myself. I don't think it's graded, and yes, very jealous of your collection. That sounds very, very cool. And thank you for your comment, and thanks for writing in. Next up, we got Keith Surratt, and Keith says, my first recollection of The Legend of Zelda on the Nintendo Entertainment System was when I was staying over at my cousin's house. My uncle at the time was a prolific video gamer, and watching him play video games is one of those cemented memories. This particular night, he was playing Zelda in one of the late dungeons, and it must have been on the second quest because he got stuck in a room with false walls and didn't know where to go. Later on, a different cousin had received a beautiful gold cartridge of his own. I had always been enthralled by the idea of The Legend of Zelda, so when I finally got my own Nintendo, that was one of the first games I asked to borrow from him. I was 3 or 4, so needless to say I didn't get very far, but I did enjoy running around the overworld. Zelda 2 came next, which really switched up the game. I remember being even more excited about Zelda 2 because of the perspective difference. I was a big platforming kid, so shifting from the overhead to a side view where the action stages, it was really cool to me, and I loved going into towns and finding people to talk to and uncovering new abilities. It was always a real feeling of achievement. Also, I love the visuals of the second game for some reason, so I've got high nostalgia for that game. A Link to the Past was up next, and oh my gosh, what an amazing game. I remember renting it on the weekends with my cousin, the same cousin, when we could get it. On those weekends, we were lucky enough to track down a copy, and they were some of the funniest moments I have from that time in my life. I mean, it was a total power fantasy for an 8-year-old boy. the amazing amount of items to collect, the different map locations, different music, the cast of characters and the gameplay, it all just blew me away. It was such a step up from what had come before on the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's so easy to imagine and dream up what these places could actually look like if you were there. It was fun to imagine what the voice of the king was like and what the bug-catching kid was like. All of this is to say that my mind went wild for this game, and to finish this off quite anticlimactically, I've got next to no experience with Link's Awakening. I've got the anniversary Zelda Game & Watch, so I've played the original a little bit, but I don't have any good memories worth sharing. I just don't have enough to go on to make any solid statements. Anyway, I really love your channel, and thank you for all the work you do for our enjoyment. Hope you and yours are well and in good spirits, good health this holiday season. Take care, and God bless. Well, thank you, Keith. Really appreciate your comment at the end there. That is very nice. Very, very much appreciated. And thanks back to you. The Triforce Times community really make this special for me, and I love sharing memories of the first 4 games, and thank you specifically for you sharing your memories. I really like Zelda 2 as well. I like the graphics, and I mean, if you're a watcher of the channel, you're going to know my love for Zelda 2, but thank you very much once again for writing in. Okay, next up we've got Eldritch Fan, and they say, I found Zelda 2, especially because of the atmospheric storytelling and the remnants of the first game. Going into the ruins of Death Mountain and seeing the broken pillars at the entrance, seeing the entire first game map tucked away at the bottom, the entire map showing a truly epic world. Next up, we got Jeremy Gibson, and Jeremy says, my cousin and I played through the first 2 together, taking turns reading the map and working the controller. The N64 came out after and he moved away to a different state. We spent hours on the phone playing through Ocarina of Time together until we both finished it. I didn't find out until I got older that he'd already beat it and we were only calling so we could play with each other. Now, to this day, I still call him during a playthrough if any Zelda game comes out and we chat about it. He sent me a few amiibos and posters over the years. I've gotten him a couple of gifts as well. It's always going to be a special series for me just because of that. Well, thank you, Jeremy. That is really cool and a great story with you and your cousin there. And yeah, hopefully you can share some fantastic memories or fantastic times with the new release of The Legend of Zelda, which hopefully should be coming in the not too distant future. But thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for watching, and thank you for writing in. Next up, we've got Jacob Kilpatrick, and they say, as a kid, I played the first Legend of Zelda, quickly got beaten to a pulp. However, my oldest brother said I might have a better time in the sequels, so I blew into the cartridge and slapped it into my Super Nintendo and tried A Link to the Past for the first time, and I immediately fell in love. The art style, the world, the items, everything just felt so good, like it should have been in the original. The dungeons were unique and beautifully designed, and the characters have a wonderful comedic personality, and the entire game was perfect, or at least as perfect as I thought imaginable. It's still to this day my favourite Zelda game, and really just my favourite game of all time. I later went back and beat the first 2 and loved those as well, but didn't strike me as hard as the third game. Of course, Ocarina of Time speaks for itself. Now, when I saw the graphics as a kid, I was blown away. A 3D Zelda? Now, I wasn't prepared for how influential the game would be on me. You know, I'm a writer, and I do think about that Ocarina of Time had a huge influence on me. It's the story of lost childhood and sacrifice that changed my thoughts on what I thought was capable in the gaming medium, and I still think it's the best Zelda story to date. I still love the first 4 Zelda games. They made me a gamer. Well, thank you, Jacob. Really appreciate it, and do share some of your writing down there in the comments. I would love to hear more about your writing and check it out myself if I can. Thank you, Jacob, for watching, and appreciate your story. Next up, we've got a friend of the channel, Cosmosis, and they say, I've got fine memories of playing The Legend of Zelda with my dad and sister. Dad would play in his spare time so that my sister and I could progress when we got stuck. We used the die in-game method to take turns in playing through the game, and if we got really stuck, I'd call the Nintendo helpline for hints, and they couldn't even help a few times. Well, sorry, Cosmosis, that is pretty bad given the Nintendo helpline costs quite a lot of money. I would expect if I rang up that helpline, you know, and I'm paying all that money, I need some answers, Nintendo. But thank you, Cosmosis. Always appreciate your comment, and thank you for writing in. Next up, we've got Ben Marple, and Ben says, I do not remember when I first played A Link to the Past, nor how many times I played it before I finally beat it in 2022. I know I got to the Dark World and beat the first Dark World dungeon numerous times throughout my teens and 20s. I know I also got to the next 3 dungeons, but I can't remember if I beat the Skull Worlds or the Swamp Palace bosses, and I'm positive I never unlocked the Thieves Town boss fight. The first time I experienced Misery Mire, Ice Palace and Turtle Rock were definitely my playthrough in 2022. I know I needed a guide to find the warp point outside the Misery Mire. I might have needed a guide for the other 2, but I can't remember. Growing up, I always considered A Link to the Past too hard and retro. I entered the franchise with Ocarina, and I wasn't interested in going backwards. And today, I have it ranked as my 5th favourite Zelda game behind the N64 and the open world title. Beating Ganon in 2022 was so rewarding. A Link to the Past had proven too much for the younger version of myself, and at the ripe old age of 30, I'd finally completed the most lauded, revered and emulated Zelda game. Today it's the title I've replayed the most, other than the N64 titles, and I've completed it 3 times in the last few years, in addition to all those failed attempts prior. Thank you, Ben, appreciate your story, and thank you for watching, and of course, for writing in. Next up we've got Kazman, and they say, my brother and I each had a file on Link's Awakening and would help each other when we got stuck. Finally at Turtle Rock we got stuck because we didn't realise you could control the platform, making boxes after pushing them. It took until we got the internet to look it up and finish the game. Well, thank you Kazman, appreciate your comment. And yes, the internet does make things so much easier these days. You can look it up and generally you'll find 100 tutorials as soon as the game comes out. Back then when the game first came out, I think there were written guides and you certainly had the instruction manual, but it didn't necessarily go through all of the stories. And of course, Nintendo had the hotline, as I think Cosmosis mentioned earlier before. Next up we got John, and John says, my mum bought me a Super Nintendo when it first came out at that time. Nintendo would give a random game which was bought with every system. The one she happened to buy was A Link to the Past, and I still possess the original cartridge to this day, over 35 years later. I've also got those old school Nintendo Power magazines with A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening, with the dope artwork that tells the story of the previous games. Well, thank you, John. Thank you for your story. And interesting there, getting a random game with a Nintendo system. That is very, very cool. And you're very lucky to get A Link to the Past. Also, having those old Nintendo Powers, very, very cool. Very jealous. And I'd love to have those to add to my collection. Next up, Lee Martin. And Lee says, mine was Zelda 1 and 2 on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1990. Really good games, then I was addicted to them and almost beat them. They are one of the harder Zelda games. I'm hoping both get a ground up remake and a double pack. Well, that would be very, very interesting indeed, Lee Martin. Yes, a new iteration of Zelda 1 and Zelda 2 on the Switch would be very, very good. I'm not sure about a double pack myself, they are quite unique games. I would love to see either kind of a Metroidvania or a Dark Souls interpretation of Zelda 2. I think that would be quite interesting, but thank you, Lee, for your comment and thank you for writing in. Next up, Gooey Chewy says, my first exposure to Zelda was when she and Link made a guest appearance on Captain N. I remember Captain N, that is very cool, that is a throwback. And Gooey Chewy goes on to say, then I started watching the cartoon after the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. My first Zelda game was Zelda 2, so I love that game, warts and all. I beat it several times as a kid, the year before I beat the first game, and now Zelda 2 is my go-to nostalgia game. I love creating my own challenges, like beating the game without the candle, or finding ways to complete things out of order, preferably without glitches. Well, thank you, Gooey Chewy, and yes, that is a couple of throwbacks there. Captain N the Games Master, and the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. I used to watch those myself. So thank you for prompting those memories. That is very, very cool. Next up we got Super Brooklynite, and they say Zelda 2 was the first Zelda game I played. My dad had the Nintendo Entertainment System in '87. He had the first Zelda before I was born, but traded it for Mario 2. There were 2 games that we always played together to try and beat, this and Castlevania. It took me 20 years, but I remember calling up my dad saying I finally beat Zelda 2 because we could never get past the long wall where the Lizalfos throws rocks at you. And Super Brooklyn, I remember myself that long wall where they throw those rocks at you, so annoying and very, very difficult, and I'm glad you got through it. And fantastic to share those memories with your dad. Next up, We2D2 Official. and they say, I remember I got Link's Awakening, the Game Boy version, for my 11th birthday. And for 2 summers after that, I would sit in bed playing it in the mornings. I made it to Turtle Rock and then I gave up. It was too hard for me the first time. Now I need to go back and figure it out. We can also go back on the Switch these days. I recommend going back to the Game Boy version. There's something about that Game Boy version that I do prefer. You do have the Switch version there if you want a more modern feel. Next up, Dark Dragon Medeus, also friend of the channel. They say, A Link to the Past is my childhood favourite game, and still to this day right up there with Chrono Trigger as an all-time favourite. I've got such fond memories of its story, dungeons, atmosphere, aesthetics, music, boss battles. I also played the other 3 later down the line, whether it to be the origins of the original, the punishing challenge of 2, and so much charm of Link's Awakening. Link's Awakening started a rather underrated era engine for 2D Zelda, which I wish more of 2.5 or 2D Zelda titles took more inspiration from. But yes, this was all a product of its time. Thank you, Dark Dragon Medeus, appreciate you writing in, of course. Next up we've got Brett Bebensi. Hopefully I pronounced your name okay there. And Brett says, honestly, A Link to the Past is my first Zelda game and will always be the genre-defining game for me. A Link to the Past defined the items in The Legend of Zelda, set the standard expectation for dungeons, and for the sake of Hylia it debuted the Master Sword. If Ocarina of Time was the 3D defining game for The Legend of Zelda, then A Link to the Past was the series defining game for mechanics like items, dungeons, and the legacy of the Master Sword, the core aspects of The Legend of Zelda. Well, thank you, Brett. I appreciate your comment, and you're absolutely right that it was the debut of the Master Sword, and A Link to the Past it certainly set the standard for the series for a very, very long time. Louis Robertson says, I rented Zelda 2 thinking it was 1 when I was a kid. And yes, interesting, I played Zelda 2 first as well. I'm not really sure why I did it. I think my dad and me went into the video game shop at the time, rented the game, and it was the gold cartridge that really drew my attention to it. Okay, final comment here. We've got Jeepsec, and they say, I was in high school when The Legend of Zelda was released on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and one of my friends got it for Christmas. He and his brother and I played the crap out of that game. It was a genuine team effort. We'd even taken sheets of graph paper and taped them together to make our own more detailed versions of the world map and the underworld, showing what we'd found and what was there, and we scribbled in notes and what the heck to do. It's a lot more intensive than it is nowadays. We can just look up a guide on the internet, but it made for some fantastic memories, and I'm still fond of them almost 40 years later. Well, thank you, Jeepsec. That was a really nice way to round out the stories in the comments there, and thank you to everybody who wrote in, and sorry if I didn't get to your story this time. There's going to be plenty of time in the future, no worries about that. But that is it for the first 4 Zelda games and why they hit different. I hope you enjoyed this video today, and if you did enjoy the video, do subscribe and hit that like button down below. Really does help me out. Hitting that like button helps the YouTube algorithm and more people see this video, so that would be really appreciated. And also, not far away, I'm coming up to 10,000 subscribers on the channel, so if you can share this with a friend or hit that subscribe button yourself, I would really appreciate it. Well, the first 4 Zelda games, they are magic to me, and looking at the evidence from your stories, they're magic to a lot of you as well. So thank you for your stories. They really make these videos a little bit extra special, and I really appreciate everyone for writing in their comments and sharing some quite personal stories at sometimes. I love the ones about The Legend of Zelda helping you to learn English. That is really cool. It's not just entertainment, it's education as well. So thank you, everybody. This one has been a fantastic video. Really enjoyed putting it together. It's been a bit of a team effort from me and the community, so thank you. As always, thank you so much for watching or for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for even more Zelda content here on Triforce Times. Thanks again. I'll see you very soon. Well, thank you so much for watching the video, but today I'd like to let you know about the Triforce Times store. If you like Triforce Times content and you want to get some merchandise, then browse the online store today. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and loads more in all shapes and sizes and colours. Also, if you didn't see something on the store that you want, then let me know in the comments. Comment on the video and let me know what you want to see in the merch store, and I will make it happen. So if you enjoy Triforce Times and want to go above and beyond to support, then the store is a great place to do that. And also, you're going to get some high quality merchandise as well. So check out the Triforce Times store today. with a selection of merch below each video, and you can also check out the store link in the description if you'd like to browse the whole store. But this video is brought to you by Triforce Times Backstage. This is available through Patreon or YouTube membership, and you're going to get exclusive benefits, plus you'll be able to go above and beyond to support Triforce Times. Free content is core to Triforce Times, and you can continue to enjoy these videos that you know and love. However, if you want to enjoy the benefits like early access, our community Discord, shoutouts in the credits of videos, content polls and exclusive videos, then select the tier that is right for you and join Triforce Times Backstage today. So help me make Triforce Times be even bigger and better, plus you're going to get some added benefits for a small fee every month. Well, thank you for listening, and now it's time to go back to the video.